Fractured stories.
Firstly, I'd like to extend my sympathies to you. Obviously, this was a horrible, traumatic accident, but I can assure you that the SEC is doing everything it can to get to the bottom of it, and rest assured you will be taken care of. I myself am here on behalf of the SEC to discern what exactly happened here, and I was possibly hoping you could assist me in that endeavor.
You want to know what happened?
Yes, and I know this likely won't be easy for you, considering the events are still fresh in your mind.
It all started with that damn ship, the Northrup.
The Northrup. What can you tell me about that ship? How was it involved?
The SGS Northrup. A hop, skip, and a jump. She's the biggest ship in her class. Former warship refitted into a civilian freighter, then refitted again into a colonial freighter. She still has her forward batteries and, of course, her two pairs of light thrust engines. Most ships of a similar class only have one, or perhaps two light thrust engines, but the Northrup has four of them. From the Terran system to Andromeda in less than a month. You can't beat that. Her crew was within the neighborhood of 12,000 people. However, that did not include the security detail. I actually worked on a Northrop at one point. Not as a crew member, but as a different spaceport other than Maxton. She came through one day and I had the pleasure of running maintenance on her engines. I worked on them for a week with sporadic breaks here and there, and made a hot handful of creds for it too. According to the ship's logs, it had left the threshold spaceport in the Terran system and was due for another one on the edge of Andromeda. Everything seemed fine. Then less than a month later, it shows up at Maxton, just like I said, on the edge of the A, and it was empty.
What was your connection to the ship?
Funny you should ask. I was working a temp contract on Maxton when it came through. I remember the heads up coming over the speakers. I was near a window facing where it would be docking, and as soon as it passed the window, I actually took a step back. She's a beast, just the right size to fit the still docks. And of course, the Terran fleet has ships bigger than her, but for colony freighters, the ship Northrup reigns supreme. She's only a few steps or so away from a fleet breaker, and for those who need specially made still docks. Then, the alarm started blaring. Suddenly, we hear over the speakers security being summoned to the same still dock as the Northrup. My first thought was raiders, and that they might have been aboard the ship. Me and a couple others, our brave little hearts awash with curiosity, managed to make it to that same dock where we watched from the back. By the time we got there, the dock was swarming with SEC personnel, all of their weapons trained on the ship's entry points. We heard one of the guards say that nobody was answering their hails and that they were breaching soon. Just a moment later, a breaching team came through hefting their hull rippers, and they got to work on the bulkhead. Roughly a few minutes later, the bulkhead came down, then in flooded SEC. We all braced for the thunder of gunfire, but there was nothing. It was dead silent, save for the breaching team checking in over the radio. It was over a half hour before the team checked in and reported there was nobody aboard. We watched an SEC officer wave the rest of his men inside the ship. It was another hour before the alarm was silenced. Turns out, it was just a quiet ship. A quiet, empty ship.
Uh, I'm sorry. There was nobody aboard.
Nobody. Not a single soul. Just a ghost ship. Just so happened to dock at Maxton.
Interesting. Please continue.
I was tasked with working on her engines. It was me, Smith, Wales, and Dawes. We were each of us tasked with a different part of our engineering deck. And as I said, I was focused on the engines. Wales was tasked with the S3 venting system, and Smith was given the lower half of engineering with the collider couplings. And lastly, Dawes was handed the term link. It was apparently stated in their ship's logs that their Timlink was on the fritz and that it should be logged and looked at by an engineer once they made it to Maxton. Obviously the ship made it, but the crew didn't, but it was logged so it needed fixing. That's the life of a spaceport engineer. The ships come in broken, we make sure they leave fixed. Everything was fine at first. It was just us working in engineering and higher-ups with SCC trying to figure out the missing crew.
And what happened?
It was slow. Wales was the first to go missing, then Dawes. Then after him, it was just me and Smith. Then people started going missing all over the port. That's when everything started going haywire. People started seeing things, shadows at the corners of their eyes, voices. Some people even glimpsed those that had gone missing. They'd be there just long enough for you to catch sight of them, then a breath later they're gone. Remember how I said the Northrup had a 12,000-man crew? Most spaceports have roughly triple that, with Maxton at 45,000 people. How can anyone look at those figures and come back with a logical answer? That's almost half 100,000 people just up and went nuts at the same time. When we started seeing missing persons posted around the port, that's when SCC stepped in. They knew something fritzed was going on, but they were in the dark just like the rest of us. There were no departure logs, but even so, we were at over 100 missing people by that point. Even if you count those who live at the ports, like say the engineers, they jump from port to port, but never more than a few, and that's over time. When things started to get really bad, SCC was dealing with angry residents, workers, and anyone who was missing a loved one. They were stretched pretty thin by that point, and when SCC personnel started vanishing, that's when things came to a head. The admins decided the best course of action was to lock down Maxton, no ships in or out. Their reasoning was they had thought some pathogen was aboard the Northrup and had spread to the port. It goes without saying that this didn't go over particularly well. A mob came, they overran SCC, then stormed the admin building. Smith and I had retreated to the res hub by that point, as had a lot of people. Our initial plan was to just lay low until everything blew over. Smith insisted on breaking lockdown, taking his ship from the hangar, but I managed to convince him to stay. It was eerie, walking through the hub and seeing so many of them still and empty. Some rooms had flowers at their doors, others just had some kind notes. We were able to scrounge what we could from our units, then we just settled there for the time being. A few others decided better get the entrance to the hub. We sheltered there while trying to get a hold of anyone else that's still in the port. Of course, admin and SCC comms were down. Crew comms was still up, but it was spotty at best. Eventually, we were able to get them working and made contact with several other groups.
I know you stated that the SEC had sent out a distress call, which was the one we heard, or specifically the SGS. Jackalope heard the call. It was stated in the call that the admin suspected a pathogen of some kind. Were you or anyone able to discern what might have actually been the reason?
No chance. By this point, the port was in flames. There were entire sections cut off or too damaged to travel through. There were people either running fritzed or running scared. SCC was completely scattered. They were knee-deep in chaos of trying to rectify a broken situation.
Understood. Please continue.
After talking with the other groups, we decided that we'd all head to Mainfair. Everyone grabbed what supplies they could carry and off we went. We were there to meet the others. We were there to meet the others as well, and our plan was to hold there until SCC arrived.
Mainfair. What is that?
Mainfair was Maxton's commercial hub. It was the largest, so it could accommodate all residents. It was a stone's throw away from Res Hub. It was going to take us to a ruined section of the port, but it was worth the risk. Mainfair had supplies, food, and even a couple aid stations. It had everything we would need to hold our ground. We saddled up and off we went. The section we had to pass through to get to commercial was Rexec. It was this huge park that took most of the space there. An arboretum. There was even a section in there that was an amusement park. Just like back on Earth. Rexec had a lot to keep you busy. If you were a worker within the port and it was your day off, you could go there and just get lost. Want to go for a long hike? Go to Rexec. Are you feeling hungry after the hike? Go to commercial. Surprisingly, it was pretty easy as we ran through that section. Nothing happened. And we all eventually made it to commercial. There was already a whole load of people there from over the port. Even a few SEC officers were there. We ran into them guarding the main entrance to that section.
Were you settling there for the time being?
Yes, once we were safe, we quickly learned the plan was to lay low in commercial and wait for the fleet. Before the admins went down, they did send out a distress call. Any SEC ships in the area would have heard it. The message laid out that the port was dealing with an unknown pathogen. Standard protocol states that if there was an outbreak inside a port, that the SEC is to quarantine and provide security and medical assistance. One of the officers assured everyone that the message got out before we lost the admin building. But they were also being honest. An unknown pathogen was the only answer. They couldn't imagine it being anything else. Simply put, something small came in from the outside and started spreading like wildfire. It was a last-ditch attempt by SEC to win some favor with the port residents, but it only went so far. A pathogen might explain the things people saw, heard, or thought, even. But such a theory didn't explain the missing people or the other strange happenings around the port.
Yes. So to add to that, our medics and various other investigators are finding it difficult to attribute this to a pathogen. It just doesn't connect. There's no way a pathogen could do something like this.
We thought we were safe at the hub. Then it all went to shit again. Through the comforting, muttering, and crying, there was a scream for the entrance we came through. It was from past the bulkhead. It was a low echo at first, then it rose to a crescendo as it penetrated the steel bulkhead. Everyone's heads turned towards the howl. Smith ended up retreating further into commercial, and I decided to stay behind and help where I could. To my dismay, my intentions would matter little. I watched as several people plus an officer reopened the bulkhead, but it malfunctioned and couldn't raise all the way. They grabbed the hand of a person and pulled them in. They were covered in this black tar-like substance, and their screams had devolved into sobs and jumbled words. Then they lay drenched in this black slime. Then they started shaking, coughing up more of it. Suddenly the stuff splattered on the floor, began moving. Not like how liquid or tar would behave typically, it slid on the floor over to the person who had helped them and enveloped them. Their screams quickly died into choking and gurgles. In response to this, the officers fired their rifles, and from there it was a downward spiral. That glimmer of calm was violently shattered. There was a stampede. Hundreds of people are running deeper into commercial. Once again, the air was rank with screams. Sometimes when it's quiet, I can still hear them. When I close my eyes, I still see the bodies.
Okay. Perhaps we should wait until your memories are less jumbled. It's obviously that you are still under a lot of stress. I will send for a medical escort back to your room, and we can continue talking some other time. Again, I want to extend my sympathies. Hopefully we can get to the bottom of this and prevent whatever it was from happening again.
I wish you the best of luck in that regard.
Considering what you told me, I think I'm gonna need it. Oh, the alarms?
I must say, I've never encountered intelligence like humanity before.
Excuse me?
Your psyche is volatile. You float through a black endless sea. For want of knowledge or out of arrogance, you wade willingly towards an unseen undercurrent. You thought you were safe on this station simply because you could breathe its air. Now I can breathe it too. And that was episode 18 of Fractured Stories, titled Northrup. Whew. 5 months in production, and here it is. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all had a good listen. This was a 5 month production, and if you want to know more about that, that'll be in the live stream that I'll be doing after this goes up. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all had fun. I want to give big thanks to Shrog for being the other voice of the SCC agent. I really appreciate the help that he put on it, and who knows, we may see him again in the future. But alas, this was your good friend the Musical Pumpkin watching over your pumpkin patch. I not much for long goodbyes, so I'll try my best. Stay dope, folks, and perhaps I'll see you in the live stream.